All right, so I'll just do it's the 28th of February, the last day, and this is the steering committee meeting, and Sarah was talking and I rudely interrupted her to start the recording.
It's all good. I was admitting my failures. I still owe a PR for the values document into the Kubernetes steering repo. However, I did get one comment back from Ken Goldberg that we do not have a value that says anything about a user voice or a customer voice or thinking in terms of building this for people who might want to use it. And I thought that was a big enough gap we might want to talk about it.
Yeah, makes sense.
No, so what's interesting is, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say one of the earlier versions had a comment about building a best tool for users and use cases, but I think that got stripped out at some point, but I can't remember which version it was in. I could go digging through comments.
It seems like a great thing to add to the next iteration.
I like your thinking, Brian.
And it really begs the question in my mind, and this is something like, I don't know, Brian and I were talking at one of these, face-to-face dinners at one point, and I brought up the situation of like, well, who are the different users of Kubernetes? And one of the examples I brought up was like this idea of embedded Kubernetes, of Kubernetes actually being implementation detail of, say, a box or something like that, right? Is that a user? And so there's these questions around who exactly are our users and who do we target and how broadly do we target? I think it's actually a pretty deep topic for us to actually say who those users are.
Okay, yeah. I like the put it up and mark a comment in the PR. And
that's a good excuse for postponing it as well. It's like defining the different personas of users and the different use cases.
Yeah.
Because there are gonna have to be priorities, and this has come up in the conformance effort as well. Like initially, some people who were embedding Kubernetes in a PaaS but didn't expose it wanted it to be conformant, and the answer is no. Like if you don't expose the Kubernetes API, there's no possible way you can be conformant. Whether conformance matters to you or not is a whole different thing, right? Like I would argue it shouldn't matter to those people because they're not exposing any Kubernetes behavior to be conformant with.
I think multi-tenant is another example. Is like, how far down the multi-tenant rat hole do we actually chase? And there's arguments on all sides there.
Got it. Okay. Next sprint thing, intra-SIG governance.
Yeah. Okay, I'll give an update on that. I think there's the requirements doc got merged. I've updated it and sent another PR that just incorporates the sub-projects into a little more and calls out sub-projects having to create the technical items instead of SIGs.
And try LGTM.
Oh, fantastic. There's the short template that's out for review. One item that needs to be determined before that's merged is what to call the SIG lead. What is currently in the text is SIG lead, but the non-technical lead. And there's a pull out with 9 votes in.
Bob Wise has been using coordinator across his, and that might be, I don't know if that's in your list or not.
That's the current lead.
Fantastic.
You're not supposed to mention that until everyone's voted, Phil.
I thought it was fascinating that almost all of my top choices were like on the bottom, so that says something about me.
What I labeled troll, Joe?
I think I voted admin, so maybe I'm the outlier.
That was my number 2. I was just curious, Phil, what is the...
Yeah, I actually pulled that one from the list, but maybe something else.
There was something else similar to that. One question that came up in my mind while I was filling in that poll of yours was, how are we planning to communicate this technical lead? So as Joe pointed out, we've now identified this coordinator thing, and we're going to list it as the coordinator for that SIG. But it seems like there's a recognition that we also have a technical lead, which presumably we're also going to vote on some title for this person. And how are we going to represent the SIG with respect to its coordinator lead and its technical lead? What's the thinking there so far?
Actually, so do you want to talk
Sure.
about that?
Yeah, so I think the way that would integrate with sub-projects is you either have technical leads and sub-projects, and then that's where most of the technical discussion happens. And if there's a technical lead at the SIG level, that would be mainly just to determine what sub-projects exist, create, destroy, as well as address like cross-SIG or cross sub-project decisions. So that's one option.
And field escalations.
And yeah, field escalations and essentially anything that doesn't fall scoped directly within only one sub-project. The other option would be that instead of having a group of SIG tech leads, you have the project leads or technical leads from the sub-projects collectively be the group of individuals with those responsibilities through some sort of federated approach.
Do we have particular SIGs identified now where that split would actually be split? Or if we think the majority of SIGs would have the same people hold both roles?
I think there are a fair number of SIGs where the people would hold both roles. The one counter example that I came up with, and one can argue whether it's a good thing or not, but SIG cluster lifecycle has a ton of sub-projects, and there's no real overall lead. So if we're going to incrementally roll this out without being too disruptive or dealing with power grabs or things like that, I think we first deal with the cases that are obvious where everybody agrees who's in charge, and I think there are a bunch of SIGs and sub-projects where that's actually the case, and we're just formalizing how things work. And for other cases, we at least get some amount of decision-making officially put into place, at least up to the sub-project level, and we say, well, this SIG, until there's an appointed or elected or chosen or whatever overall lead, they have to rely on lazy consensus seeking with voting or whatever to break ties among the sub-project leads.
Do we have any sense of whether there will be any SIGs where the existing leads will have a problem being effectively demoted? Like, I want to make sure that we don't perceive this as a demotion for people.
But these would be cases where these are people who technically are called SIG leads today, but they're not in owners files for the code that's actually owned by that SIG.
They might be owners files, but they're maybe not the ultimate owner.
I think having the explicit role actually helps people find their way into the community too. Because like there are people who are doing cat wrangling who don't want to do cat wrangling, right? And like if you want to manage and update and curate the issues and the prioritization for the release, and you're really good at that and you enjoy that, I want those people to find a happy home in a SIG.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. I think the structure is actually really good. I'm just worried about the social implication of this. I just don't want it to be perceived. I don't think it is a demotion. I just don't want it to be perceived as such.
Well,
I think that's why we need a unique and different name, right? Because if we come up with a new name and we're saying SIG lead doesn't exist anymore, and we're taking what oftentimes is SIG lead and we're splitting it into these two different functions or these separate functions and hats, then people can map themselves into those things.
And we could also do the exercise of going through some number of SIGs to see how well we think the model holds up and how much change there will be.
I think that's valuable.
I think the way we frame it and make sure that we frame it as valuing these characteristics is a huge part, because there's a lot of people who can bring contributions to the community in this way that can't bring it, in a SIG architecture level lead position or tech lead position or whatever we'll call that one.
Another thing we're adding to the proposal, I think, is the idea of creating more roles for each SIG, more like the release team, so that we can actually have job postings across the project, so more people can be in owners files, and we have more clear ways for people to contribute. And I think this effectively can replace the concepts of SIG membership that we discussed before. Like, you get a vote if you are signed up to fill some role, and you're filling that role. Like, you're in an owner's file, then you're a stakeholder. If you just randomly show up and comment, sorry, that's not enough to actually get a vote on anything.
Right. It's certainly helpful and it's important to hear perspectives, but it's not enough to have a voting. It would be a non-binding vote versus a binding vote kind of thing.
Yes. But I really think that's going to be much more effective at getting people to do stuff than having a pile of 4,000 GitHub issues.
So probably want to email the SIG leads group to kind of update them on what's going on. We'll want to send out something on Kubernetes Dev and make an announcement in the community meeting. And then instead of saying, I think what we also should mention is instead of saying, hey, like this is how things are right now, just make it more of an informative, this is what we're thinking, this is what we have so far. Don't worry about things right now. Like see if your group, if this stuff makes sense for your group. And in the meantime, we're going to start doing some canary testing of what we have with a few select SIGs and kind of roll on to the next few as we can go. Am I understanding all of that correctly?
Yeah, you mean as the next steps?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking too as well, like spelling out the charter template and actually having SIGs formalize their charter template helps to drive the whole process. And that's part of the comment I made on one of the email chains that have gone by.
So sorry, what did you think the actionable item was from that for us? Was it to merge the charter templates before we send, or at least one of them before we send out this announcement?
Provided that the charter template doesn't have any of the contentious items on it. I think there's a couple items that we found we'd have a little bit of contention on with regards to SIG roles and responsibilities. But it makes sense to have the template in place for people to, for them to actually define the roles, right?
Correct. I mean, it might make sense to start out with the shorter template that doesn't spell out quite as many processes for handling pieces, and would there also probably have less contentious stuff in it.
I had to go get a power cable really quick. I'm sorry. So we would roll out the template, but was there a timeline that we had for when we wanted SIGs to get their charters in place by?
No, and I don't even think we necessarily want to set that up until we've done a couple successfully.
Yeah, the only reason I ask is I've had a couple awkward experiences recently in a couple SIGs where absent having that charter would make figuring out if people wanted to sponsor or get their repo into the project difficult. And so in some ways, like, the earlier the better, I think. And so like if we want to do this early in the 1.11 cycle as like a goal, that might be probably good. But I didn't know what everyone else thought.
We can also gate certain things like I know we have limited controls, but we could do something like you can't create new repos until you have a charter in place.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like you can't sponsor a new SIG sponsored project until you have the charter that says the process by which you chose to do that. And so like some gatekeeping like that might be in order.
So I want to echo, I mean, some of the stuff that Michelle was saying, I think, having sort of like how do we introduce this into the rest of the community in a way where folks have a chance to have input, but we don't spend forever sort of, navel gazing about this stuff and make progress. And so, it's going to be a delicate thing. We definitely want folks to buy in and understand it and explain it, but we also don't want this to drag out forever because it's taken us long enough as it is to decide amongst ourselves even. I think that's kind of what Michelle was getting at. Hopefully I'm not putting words in your mouth, Michelle.
No, I just wanted to take away some action items from what we were talking about. So, Phil, you've been leading this, so what do you think in terms of action items?
I think agree upon the name, finish that vote.
Okay.
Update the short template. Let's take a look and make sure that if there's nothing contentious in here and it matches the thought process we all had behind it, let's merge that and send out a thing if it seems like there's a bunch of pieces that we aren't sure about still, let's figure out if we want to block on getting this merged or not in that case.
So I would suggest that as we send it out, we call it sort of a beta or something like that, or a draft, and then we put a date on it of like, hey, any feedback between this, we want to close and make this final by XYZ date.
One thing I'm wondering is like the practical human challenge of writing that first charter. I would imagine that would probably be done with the existing SIG leads identified. And I don't know if that's like, to me, it seems like those are the ones who are going to be motivated to try to write that charter. I don't know if that's going to produce the best charter necessarily, or if that could cause contention. So I don't know if there's a particular guinea pig SIG that we want to try this out on first to just see how it goes according to Joe's beta mindset.
SIG contributor experience sent a charter to us last week based off of the existing template as it was. So it might be worth offering feedback on that.
Or yeah, and or how they found the experience of writing that. Like, was it just the couple of SIG leads that did that today who did it? Were others feeling like they were left out? Like, I don't know what the process was. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can ask Paris. I don't know the specifics. I think she and George and Garrett got together and threw out a draft and then sent it across to the rest of the SIG to review.
I'd be curious. The big SIGs in my mind are SIG storage, SIG node, and SIG network. And I'm sure there are others that are slipping my mind, but those are ones with multiple big sub-projects, etc. I'd be curious to see how they find implementing this, whether it works well for those big old SIGs that have been around forever and have lots of code.
API machinery and cluster lifecycle apps.
Yeah. Yeah, there's other obvious ones.
Quick. Yeah. Well, actually, it doesn't get that long. I think we have something like 30 odd SIGs. I think it is fewer than 10 for sure that are.
Well, and then we could use this to complete the sort of SIG cloud provider or not, or get our act together with respect to that.
Oh yeah. Speaking of which, the issue was brought up that SIG AWS leadership change never officially happened in the file. Like the PR was closed and nothing ever happened.
Okay. You want me to poke Bob on that maybe?
Yeah, that would be good. So there are at least 2 or 3 people who should be removed, and if everybody in the SIG agrees Bob should be added, then he should be added.
Yeah, okay. I'll poke those folks.
But anyway, the reason I thought of that is because it would become a sub-project if we had SIG Cloud and put them all under SIG Cloud. So
what I have for action items are agree on name, update the short template, and merge if nothing's contentious. And then there was also a point about getting feedback from SIG Contrib X on the experience of writing a charter. So I'm thinking like an idea from that idea is perhaps on the SIG leads mailing list, we could send a note out, or we could actually work on framing that message about the upcoming change. And along with that message about the upcoming change, we could also extend like a hand offering some help and feedback in case people are trying to create a charter based on what we learned from Contrib X.
Do we want, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. If we're going to send a message, do we want that just as like a separate PR? So like, here's the process for adopting this thing. Is it that level of complexity, or is it just like a short email?
I was thinking short email, but whatever we all think is best.
Okay, I'll start with that, but I'll send it to the steering committee before I send it out.
Sounds great. If you could make that a doc and make it comment, that might be good.
That's a better idea.
Okay. I'm happy to help if you need anything.
Yeah, I'll probably ask you for your help.
Do we have a date that we want to have a forcing function on by? Because if we're using this as a carrot/stick for people to create new repos, the requests have been inbound pretty heavily lately to create new repos. So is there a drop dead date that we want to try to meet?
Well, we require the SIGs to do the whole charter. I mean, previously we had talked about the SIGs have to identify all their code. So I just asked SIG apps just now to go do that because they asked for a repo. If we are going to ask them to do a charter, then yeah, it needs to be, the templates and everything need to be done really soon.
With soon would be this week, next week?
This week.
Okay. Okay, so if this isn't merged by Friday, then we're not going to block on it effectively, right?
That's a good position to take, I think.
All right. Sounds like we have a pretty reasonable plan moving forward there. Any other things on that?
Vote if you care. Polls closed today.
On the SIG lead.
By the way, Phil, that was lots of cat herding and fantastic to see it almost done.
What is the net that we cast for who can vote?
Us.
Just us. Okay.
Okay, the repository proposal. Who owns this?
That's Brendan's thing. I don't know who else is on that
Aaron.
committee.
Yeah, so and Brendan's had the proposal. Did it merge? I think it merged. And Aaron finished setting up all the automation. So effectively, as far as we know, we're ready to go on the repos. And the only thing that we're blocked on right now is asking the SIGs to identify all their subprojects and all their owners files on a case-by-case basis. But effectively, it's open for business, in my opinion.
Okay, sounds good. And then formalize the concept of subprojects. That
is moving right along as well. And the subprojects are, we took a first stab at enumerating all the repos other than Kubernetes, categorizing them into subprojects and identifying all their owners files. In some cases, maybe even adding some owners files where they didn't exist. Phil added some language about subprojects to one of the existing documents, and also has a PR out to merge owners and maintainers to simplify the contributor ladder and get the GitHub roles out of there and introduce some subproject terminology into the contributor ladder. So I think it's moving right along. We actually, I think, need to actually just explain what it is better somewhere and announce. It has, I think we have talked about it at the community meeting, but it's not well documented. But we're continuing to make progress on fleshing out the concepts and the mechanisms.
Where do we have any documentation on the subproject stuff? And where would that live, ideally?
Well, ideally, it would be in the community repo. for the specific document. Probably the thing that talks about a few places. The community groups is probably one place. The contributor ladder is where Phil has a PR open to add it to the contributor ladder. And then the description of owners files, most likely. It will go somewhere there. So I think it will get sprinkled around in a few places. But the README for the community, Kubernetes community, may deserve something about it as well. Because it mentions SIGs. Right now it says Kubernetes is a set of projects, each shepherded by a SIG. So we should change that to just say subproject. And say something about you can find the subprojects by looking at the big SIG table.
So in very brief summary, do we have a single GitHub org that houses all of these projects, subprojects, sorry, or repos, which are in turn shepherded by a specific SIG? Is that the structure that we've adopted?
The structure we adopted is we effectively have two kinds of orgs in the project. We have the Kubernetes org, which, for lack of a better term, is being called core, but logically things that roll into the Kubernetes release. And then the SIG repos under the Kubernetes SIGs org. And right now there are no repos there yet, but things from Incubator might move there, or they might move into the Kubernetes org.
Okay, but in practice, those would probably, each repo would be presumably a sub-project, and each sub-project would be owned by SIG.
Yeah, I mean, there are some sub-projects that are multiple repos, like...
Sure, makes sense.
But yes.
But it's not one repo per SIG. It's multiple repos per SIG, and they're all in one flat structure.
It's multiple, it's one or more sub-projects per SIG and one or more repos per sub-project.
Yeah, that makes sense. All in one organization.
Well, or two organizations, right? Like
yes, the core one and the other one. Yeah.
That was what we ultimately settled on, was Kubernetes SIGs, right?
Yes. Yeah, we have the Kubernetes SIGs org all set up.
Yeah, cool.
What's the uptake on repos there? Do you know?
Well, we haven't blessed any new repos there yet because we need the SIGs to...
The charters.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious. I saw the first one from Ken this week.
Yeah, there's a ton of demand, like Tim said, but we haven't really started the ball rolling yet.
With respect to the community repo, I'm making some slow progress. I think the Contribex folks have, come around to let's build a site around that stuff. And so continuing to concentrate where we're putting all this stuff and organize it into the contributors or the community repo paves the way for us to actually have it in a more discoverable way. So that's percolating along.
So the action item is, let's put something in the community repos README about the different types of projects, correct?
Yes. And there are probably going to be a few documents that will get sprinkled around. The README, I just saw the governance.md, which talks about SIGs and working groups and committees and so on.
Okay.
The owner's description, things like that. So I think there'll be 3 or 4 places we'll need to sprinkle it in.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Someone to take the action item, or is it already assigned to someone?
Someone needs to do it.
Yeah, we haven't assigned action items yet. Would you like to take it, Phil?
Yeah, were you volunteering? If you don't do it, I'll probably do it. But
Brian, I feel you have 8,000 things to do, so I can help.
You're underestimating by an order of magnitude.
Okay, yeah. So I can take that if you want.
That would be awesome.
I will just poke people if there are holes.
Thank you.
I would happy to be a guinea pig for SIG scheduling because we have a demand from Huawei. I see Quentin there, to try and get some repos created. So I'd be happy to recharter and recast roles and demote
just
myself.
Say no, Tim.
Yeah. just to get the ball rolling, to get feedback on it.
Okay, I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, if you can also just go identify all the code in the Kubernetes repo and get that into the SIG.YAML, that would be awesome.
Sorry, was that addressed to me? Or?
Somebody involved in SIG scheduling.
Oh, okay, that's not.
For SIG scheduling.
Not the whole thing.
Since Tim was saying he's happy to be a guinea pig. You can't get new repos until you do that. So
We have very few levers to really twist people's arms.
but new repos is something that most SIGs want. So
Okay. So next agenda item is CNCF governing board issues for Michelle and Brandon. The first one that I saw an email from Dan Kahn saying approval of up to 600K for improving Kubernetes conformance tests. So are we all in agreement? First, like, anyone understand why it's up to? Shouldn't we be approving actual budget items like 600K?
it's
They're allowed to
because
spend less than that.
it's because not all of the work items are fully fleshed out.
Okay. So, I mean, we're going to have to put it in front of the governing board saying we approve X dollars or something.
Yeah, so this is the amount that Dan
Or is
has
it-
proposed. This is the amount that Dan has proposed get approved, but it might not all get spent.
Okay. Okay.
I was under the impression that it would be a purchase order of 600,000 and that we could use as much of that as we need throughout the year.
Okay. Okay.
Is that not correct, Brian?
You may know more about the mechanics than I do, but I do know that not all of the work items and milestones have been worked out, and I've been told that as ideas come up, I'm going to review them and make sure they actually provide value. But it's not. There is one specific thing that has been proposed, and it didn't sound to me like that was going to use up that much of the 600K worth of time. But I was assured, people would come up with other work items as well. The one thing that we were asked to do, which I have done, is add a requirement for conformance tests to our GA API criteria. So it's not as if CNCF will be digging us out of a hole in terms of coverage forever. And that was deemed to be sufficient assurance, despite all the details not having to be worked out.
Okay. So essentially what we're doing is we're approving up to 600K, and then it's Brian Grant and anyone else who shows up who's actually has the discretion over that budget. Everyone comfortable with that?
Yeah, I mean, SIG testing and other folks are going to come up with specific proposals. But, SIG architecture needs to say whether they're sufficient to get, whether they're appropriate and meaningful for conformance testing and things like that. So it's going to be a partnership amongst multiple people. But yes, people in the community will be making sure that the money is well spent.
Yeah, we just have to make sure the logistics are in place so we can have a clearinghouse for reviews and everything else. We don't want people to get stuck and have to rebase PRs on stuff like this.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, what does that 600K represent as a percentage of the annual CNCF budget? Roughly.
It's less than 2 platinum members.
Yeah.
But that's like, we only have 20 platinum members, so that's like 10% of the budget.
Full price platinum members, you should say, because not all are full price platinum.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what I'm trying to figure out. Like, do we think this is worth 10% of the CNCF budget? I don't know. I mean,
So this is also overage that was earmarked to us from a much successful KubeCon. So they were able to sell more sponsorship and more tickets to KubeCon last year than they had budgeted and intended. So this is overage. But yes, it is a non-trivial amount of the CNCF budget.
Yeah. Let me just look it up. I don't know offhand. It's in the tens or 20s of millions of dollars yearly. So I'm not concerned.
okay, so
I also don't expect it to be a standing expense. It's a one-time expense.
Also, it didn't seem like anybody really objected well, not anybody, but most people didn't really object. They just wanted to know what that money would be used for at the last meeting. And they just wanted to know that the steering committee approved usage of this much spending.
Well, it sounds reasonable. I was just curious.
There was a concern about how, like, you know, this is is this a bailout, and are we going to provide? Is the CNCF going to provide a bailout like this to other projects? So that was the only pushback we got on this item, in case anyone's concerned.
Cool.
So this is the second example of us, you know, hiring folks to do work on behalf of Kubernetes. I think the other one is the tech writer to do the workaround.
Well, there's also the DevStats dashboard.
Oh, that's true. Okay, the DevStats dashboards too. So one of the things,
and there was the Kubernetes bootcamp, but Google paid for that.
Okay, so one of the things, and I think, you know, we should do a little bit of retrospective on this to make sure that these things are hitting the mark and make sure that they're effective. Because one of the things, and I haven't been in the thick of it, so I don't have all the ins and outs and details, but I've heard some surprise from folks that, like, hey, there's big changes happening in SIG docs that are being driven by this contractor, and it's not necessarily felt like it's accountable to the project, but to whoever is sort of like managing that person on the CNCF side. So again, I don't have all the context, but it feels like there's some sort of, you know, communication / who's really, you know, directing what's going on with respect to those things. Specifically around retooling the site to be based on Hugo instead of Jekyll or whatever it's.
Presumably, if these are Kubernetes things, like if these are you talking about Kubernetes docs specifically? They're not like CNCF docs.
Yeah, the Kubernetes.io site is getting a huge makeover, and it's been a surprise to a lot of folks. And this is
so that should presumably go through a SIG, right? I mean,
yeah. And again, I don't have all the details, so like this is all hearsay. Maybe, I mean, I see Sarah nodding, so maybe she has some color on this too. But I think there's a larger lesson around, like, we need to make sure that this stuff works through the SIGs and that we have some accountability and visibility there.
Yeah. Just for my own word, I'm sorry, Michelle, if you want to talk.
I'll talk since I've been interrupting everyone. Sorry. So at a high level, this is what I understand about how things are going to go down. And Brian, I'm not sure like how much of this is like set in stone. But from a high level, what I got was the proposal is to go to each SIG and say, you know, what conformance tests would you like for the APIs that you're responsible for, and then that goes back to SIG architecture for approval, which then goes to the conformance test contractors to execute on, and then goes through those executed that implementation. So those PRs also are reviewed by someone from SIG testing as a final approval if this is a sane test. So at a high level, this is what I understand about the process. Brian, correct me if I'm wrong.
And that sounds similar to what I heard. I mean, in terms of reviewers, people from the functional SIGs will need to decide whether it's a correct test of the functional behavior that was intended. SIG testing's involvement would be for things like new test infrastructure to make sure it's a well-formed E2E test, that it's not flaky, things of that nature. And yeah, SIG architecture needs to sign off on whether it's valid to add it to the conformance suite.
Where's all the work tracked and how we're doing this and all that?
Probably there will be a spreadsheet or something that will be put together as part of this.
So do we need to have individual SIGs account for this time somehow to say what they wanted audited for conformance? Like how is, I guess.
Yeah, and so what I saw is that there was a doc that Jago was starting to collect from the different SIGs with some information about test proposals. So it was still kind of at a high level when I saw it, but yes, I assume the SIG sub-project area owners will need to sign off on those specific tests.
And then, like, if I was to map this activity to the roles that we're talking about rolling out, would this have been an activity that we assumed the coordinator would be driving or the tech lead would be driving?
I would think it would be the sub-project owners, the technical side.
Okay.
And the coordinator would probably do wrangling for any ones that.
Yeah, chasing down some projects that weren't responding and things like that.
Okay. This feels like one of those things that mapping it to the roles felt useful. So thank you.
Yeah, that was like a really good idea. Okay, so action items from this is Brandon, can get confusing. Brandon and I are going to just follow up on this at the next governing board meeting, and maybe we should grab that proposal from Jago and send it out to the steering committee so we're all on the same page. Does those action items sound sane? Is there anything else?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, great. I will find that proposal.
And then the other thing that we have to discuss is the bug bounty thing that came to our mailing list this week. Overall,
That's targeted at security, right?
yeah, this is essentially, I mean, as Kubernetes gets higher and higher profile, we're going to get people searching for bugs. And so we want to ensure that there's a bounty program and also importantly, a first line of triage, since we have a bunch of volunteers that are having to triage these incoming bugs, having a third party that executes the bug bounty program and then triages the bugs as they come in.
Is the proposal to issue the bounty on the basis of fixed bugs or identified bugs?
Identified bugs.
So I guess the one thing we need to be careful of is that we don't end up with a pile of identified bugs that we don't fix.
Well, these are security, right? Security issues.
Yep.
Sure, but
yeah, I had a similar concern, and we'll have to prioritize fixing them, and they'll have to be, I guess. Do we have any notion of severity level?
So this feels like we need a security committee, right? Somebody who can actually evaluate these things.
Well, we have a security team.
They have one.
What's that?
We have one. And
I know. I think we need to charter it as a committee, make it public, have it be like a, something that is, more official.
We can't make it public.
No. Make the membership and that exists and sort of like put it on the community page and have a direct.
It is on the community page.
is that a SIG or what exactly is that?
It's just, it's part of the SIG Auth.
Okay, makes sense.
It's a security team, and we could call it or rename it a committee to align it with our current terminology.
That's what I was thinking, because I think
it's like the code of conduct committee.
Yeah, it's something where it's like there's a closed set of people. There's private discussions.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's fine. Okay, I can take the action to rename it to committee.
Well, and I think it's something that's not part of SIG Auth. It's something that's a project-wide thing. That it would be a peer to SIG Auth to some degree.
Well, I mean, so far it's been accountable. Like SIG Auth essentially is where security stuff is, and so like that team essentially is accountable to SIG Auth. That's how we structured it. I don't know whether it's correct or not, but it needs to be somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't sound fundamentally different than what we've been calling working groups or sub-projects up to now, other than the fact that it is somewhat more private for understandable reasons. But presumably its existence should be well publicized, and maybe the people on it should be well publicized. I mean, it's not a covert thing, right?
No, I mean, if you go to kubernetes.io/security, it explains the membership and all that stuff.
So we had reserved the name committee in our original charter doc to be a group that might have private communications for one reason or another. So that would be a code of conduct committee, that would be the security committee, that would be that kind of, those types of places, as opposed to SIGs and even the steering committee, which fits the model as well. But SIGs, we expect to have all public conversations, or nearly all public conversations.
And I think there's the idea that anybody can come and join a SIG. It's open to all, whereas the committee is very much more of a closed group. Well, I think it's mostly a terminology type of thing, but maybe there's a charter around that too. I don't know.
In favor of renaming to committee. I don't really see the necessity to like publicize its members. So what are the pros and cons of that?
Well, I mean, so it's currently called the Product Security Team. It's on Kubernetes.io/security, and it's all public along with membership. The trouble is that similar to Code of Conduct Committee, we haven't really figured out a way of like rotating people off and that sort of thing, because you kind of want it to be a small team. So.
Gotcha.
We need a committee charter.
Yeah. I mean,
He's super good at creating those.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty well documented. It's just the rotation thing. It's similar to the SIG rotation thing. It's not like the SIG AWS rotation's been like super smooth.
I talked to those folks on that, by the way, so we'll see what happens there.
Regardless, like, is this something we want to approve budget for and then oversee, or wait till the next governing board meeting, which isn't until KubeCon EU, which is in May?
I think it's worth approving and going forward. We have a good committee. It's just that it's lacking a way to rotate, which shouldn't hold up the bug bounty program.
Yeah,
I'm still a little confused. Sorry, I'm just reading the Kubernetes IO security. I mean, it seems to be squarely focused around the public reporting vulnerabilities, as opposed to broadly being responsible for security of Kubernetes. So who would like fix these vulnerabilities and
so the process that the security team follows is we triage the issues, and then we pull in the developers who are in the owner's files related to those issues.
And SIG Auth owns security for Cube right now. Like, to the question of where do security problems go that are not private, it is SIG Auth.
Yeah. So the proposal here would be to approve money to essentially put like an L1 team in front of the security list that triages those issues. And then the reason we would need an L1 team is because we're now incentivizing the filing of more issues by giving people money for filing legitimate issues. And so we can't really increase supply and not also decrease the demand on the people who are volunteering to do the work.
Yeah, sounds reasonable.
Okay. Everyone cool with Michelle and I approving this budget item and raising it?
Good.
Cool. Great. You feel the excitement in the room for the bug bounty program. All right. Last bit of business here. CNCF graduation. We got 8 minutes left.
We passed.
We passed.
Yay!
Hey.
The CNCF is sorting out publicizing it. It may actually happen next week during the leadership summit.
Cool.
I feel like everybody should get graduation caps.
So as part of writing that application, I ran a script to count the number of owners files. We have more than 4,000 owners files.
Wow, that's impressive.
How many contributors do we have?
Is that good?
No, they were mostly automatically generated. So once we identify sub-projects, I think we might want to go prune some of those back.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see those things more, like more line up with groups instead of people, because that makes it easier to find what meetings to go to, who to talk to. It creates some cohesiveness, so yeah.
Yeah, and we need both sides. But if we put the reviewers, approvers, and owners associated with sub-projects, and then tag the code with sub-projects, that could work. In any case, yeah, and that's good. That'll move forward.
Cool.
Prometheus will probably graduate as well, I'm guessing.
Tim suggested a list of next sprint items. If we want to add any, I said number 1 would be to finish the open sprint items. Do we have any that we want to add?
Brian had proposed adding the code of conduct committee as a sprint item. I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, there were more issues that have come up recently that are kind of cross the line or on the line. So it would be good to have some official policies in place as well as to just like refresh the whole code of conduct, because I think we have found it to be wholly inadequate for the situations that come up in our community.
So I can also offer the enforcement piece that Google has written for all Google-led projects. And we can, from there, decide if we want to adopt that piece as well. So having a code of conduct is great. It just says, here's what we expect, but it doesn't say, and if you fail, here's what will happen.
I think there are some simple triage kind of things that we need to get some process around as well, like spam in our mailing lists. You know, it's easy. I just like ban those people right away and delete all their messages. Or hostile comments in GitHub issues and PRs from people who aren't actually part of our community usually. So I just ban those people first and ask questions later. But I think it would be good to make that official policy. And then we'll need rules for people who do have roles in our community. What do we do?
So,
go ahead, sorry.
No, please go. I've interrupted like 6 people today.
That's just video conferencing. And I think, you know, it's probably worthwhile for us, like if we do go down that sort of ban first and ask questions later, to have a process so that people can appeal and, like, you know, different levels of being in jail.
Sure, but I figure if their GitHub ID is something snarky to begin with, and they've never shown up on anything before, then they probably deserve.
I know. Yeah,
That's very subjective, Brian.
This is why
I think one
turns out
GitHub
JB
ID
is
like
snarky. Who knew?
one GitHub ID I'm thinking of was something like Sleaze Master or something like that.
Oh no. Oh, no.
Yeah, I think we should just, people have very strange reasons for choosing their GitHub names, and I'm not about to question them, but I think the repeal.
So anyway, the comments were hostile. The
Oh,
comments
no, sure. But just in general, I think what Joe mentioned, just having an appeal process where at least we can, give them a second chance. You know, most of the time we might say, no, sorry, you blew your first chance. But
So I thought these were things that like the committee would decide, or is it things we decide, or should
Go
ahead.
I think we should try to pull together a committee, and offer them some suggestions, let them go away, build some things, come back and talk with us.
Yeah, but I do think, you know, ultimately enforcement is going to need to be across a broader set of people for like these sorts of transgressions, right? Like if we have folks from contributor experience who are curating mailing lists, Slack, GitHub, whatever, they should just be empowered to stop
Definitely.
people in their tracks first, and then appeals would go to the committee, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm happy to help with forming the committee. And then I think one specific question I have is, do we want some subset of steering committee members to be on that committee, or is it something that's generally independent of the or would be independent of the steering committee? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I think it can be independent, and overlap can be accidental or intentional to get it bootstrapped, but it doesn't need to be explicit permanently, I don't think.
Yep, 100% agree.
Right. Like people who are experienced doing that, I would be happy to have them just be doing that and not have to worry about steering committee stuff and vice versa.
yeah.
Anyone have experience forming a code of conduct committee from our group? Okay, awesome.
Little suspect. Sucker!
I am happy to help, and in fact, I was just texting you because I have a list of people who I've talked to about this. So
We actually had asked for volunteers after our meetings last year, about a year ago by now.
Yep.
So I don't know if I can still dig those up in my inbox or if someone else can, but
I have at least 2 of the names off the top of my head, so.
Okay, so it sounds like we need an initial document for a rough idea of like what a code of conduct committee is in our world, how many people we want, and just like a rough outline of what process would take place. And then we also in parallel have a list of people to consider. So
yeah, we also in the steering committee backlog, I have a list of issues we found with the existing code of conduct policy. And I think there are more that we've discovered since then, but we, at least have a list of issues that need to be addressed in the official policy to start with.
okay, sounds good.
I have to drop. There's some action items that I put question marks in while I was recording them. So,
Okay.
Need help. All right, bye.
Figure it out. Bye.
So,
Yep, don't want to go over. So sounds like we're good.
but I just want to say I'm happy we're actually making progress on stuff. So
Yeah, me too.
It's slow and painful, but it's happening.
Always slower than you want, but it is moving forward. Bye.
okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
See you all next time.